Here we go. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. It's our film and television industry lecture series, and it's the last day. And our final guests are with us today, and I couldn't be more excited about our 11:30 guest, Mr. Pete Chatmon. If you don't know his name, and I'm fairly certain you do certainly know his work. Every week, at some point when you turn on the TV, you're crossing paths with this man's work. And we're excited to have the director of a handful of episodes from Blackish and from Grey's Anatomy and A Million Tiny Things, which is some of my favorite shows. And I'm super stoked. I'm geeking out a little bit for our guest, Mr. Pete Chatmon. Good morning, Pete.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to join you.
Wow. Well, a few of my family members and friends and everyone are, tickled that we have you on this morning. I don't know how well how much you mean to people and how famous you've become because you show up in our houses every so often through these shows. Tell us about like the general feeling of working on some of these really awesome shows today.
It's a great feeling. It's been a long journey, and I've been fortunate to really work only on shows that I watch and enjoy, because it's not always like that. What I enjoy most, I guess, is getting an opportunity to take what I've kind of honed and learned from myself as a filmmaker and ultimately as a storyteller, because I think that's like the basement level of what we do, and you can't blossom up from that or to anything else if you really don't understand story. I enjoyed having an opportunity to really kind of hop in these different families and build something. I think I got a lot of analogies for the job, but one thing that's been coming up as of late is that it's very much kind of like being an architect. So someone comes to you, right? They've got a vision for their dream house, right? So it's like, they want a Tudor, they want a colonial, they might want a ranch, they just want one story, they might want some wild, whatever. I'm trying to keep the language clean. They might want some wild house, like modern house on the side of a mountain. And your job as the architect is to not say you can't have that. It's how do I take what I've learned? How do I take these skills and make that house for you? And so as someone who's still like, I just finished a short screenplay that I want to do when we get out of this shelter at home situation and everybody's safe. I can get an opportunity to try new things, build other people's homes, and then come back and make my dream house with a little bit more skill, because the thing that I get from each show is an opportunity to learn a different way of storytelling in whatever fashion they're doing, and also bring something to it by finding myself in the story. And, I always walk away with something that will make me better. And oftentimes you can't even predict it. Like I did 4 episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia last year. And it's such a quick, fast moving show, like a 3-camera show that is it's kind of shot like a multicam almost, which is like a live before a studio audience where you have just 3 cameras just all looking in one direction. But on this show, they will also, it's not in front of an audience, so they'll have the 3 cameras and then they'll turn around and look back the other way, or look whatever other way. And what I had to learn in blocking, the simplicity of blocking that I got from that show helped me tremendously when I did Station 19, which you wouldn't think, but like I got 8 fire trucks and ambulances and 8 vehicles. I got shots. 7, main characters and all this kind of movement, and then people coming in and out of this bowling alley. And what I learned on that show made me more successful on a show of a different genre. And then all of that I'll bring back to my work. So long story short, I enjoy it a lot. It's an opportunity to just really become a better storyteller.
Awesome. Well, tell you what, let's take a step back and start off with the proper introduction of who you are and what you do. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about, where your background and how you got into this in the first place?
Yeah. So, much like we all have our own origin stories. Mine began in high school. I'm from New Jersey. I grew up in a town called South Orange. At the time, I hope they still have it, but at the time they had a filmmaking program, Super 8 cameras. They had a photography program where we were developing our own photos, and they had the local public access TV channel ran through the school. So I took all three of those courses, and there's something about having an opportunity to try, because 2 years ahead of me, and like I didn't gravitate toward the TV stuff, ironically, right? But 2 years ahead of me was Zach Braff, and he was the TV guy, and then he'd go on to be on Scrubs and then make Garden State. But all of that proximity is a huge factor. And so my teacher in high school had gone to NYU, and so I was like, well, I guess that's where you go. You know what I mean? And this is 1994, 95. So this is a long time ago. And the idea of being a filmmaker was not necessarily you didn't say I'm going to film school and everybody was like, cool, I get it. People like, really? And at the same time, you had to go, or it was a more necessary choice than today, because the only way you were going to get your hands on equipment was at a film school.
To go to film your school
cost too much, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so anyhow, I always wanted to direct. I started writing because I had nothing to direct. I started producing because I needed money for the thing that I wrote to direct. And my focus had always been, and continues to be, on telling stories about characters who don't have the camera pointed at them, particularly Black characters. And in addition to that, characters that kind of move on the periphery of mainstream storytelling. They're service providers, but we don't know what their lives are like, right? And so so I made a short that went to Sundance that starred Kerry Washington. That was the film I made to graduate NYU. I spent about 5 years after that. That film went to about 30 film festivals, and during that and after that, I had spent about 5 years raising $500,000 to make my first feature called Premium that I wrote, produced, and directed. And then I did a feature documentary. I was doing web content. I was doing branded content, building my production company. And long story short, after about a 6-year period of writing a lot of screenplays that I thought I would sell, that I never did, winning competitions at Tribeca, etc. I went back to the guy that was in high school just making films that I thought would be interesting and challenging. And I made a short called Black Card. And that short ended up getting picked up by HBO. And so with that got me on the radar of the TV directing programs. I did 4 of those programs. I shadowed on 10 different shows. And ultimately, I ended up booking, the first show I booked was Blackish. And so my first episode, that was the first thing I booked, but the first thing I ended up directing, because when the world is the world and it's online, you book a show and it'll be 7 months out, because they're getting ready for the next season. So I had that, I knew I had that. And then I ended up doing this thing for Insecure season 2, their show within the show, a project called Due North, which was basically what all the characters in the show, they have a popular show that they all watch and comment on. And this was a scandal slavery melodrama comedy with Regina Hall and Scott Foley and Michael J. White. And so I did that. That got me into the DGA. And then fortunately, I had booked Blackish first, and then Grownish got greenlit, and they gave me a Grownish episode. So that was the first episode I ever directed. which kind of got the
flow going.
jitters
Yeah.
out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the first one that I booked was the second one I directed. And, you know, and speaking of, I hope a takeaway for folks too is that, you know, I graduated in '99 from NYU. I went to Sundance in '01. I made that feature in '05, and it took 2 years before it hit distribution in '07. I made another feature at Doc in '08. I had my production company. I was doing events. I was doing web stuff. And it wasn't until 2015 that I did the directing programs as a result of the HBO program. And it was in 2015 when I finally got representation, a manager and a lawyer. I mean, I'm sorry, a manager and an agent. So that is a 16-year timeline, you know what I'm saying? And so I think people, you know, think like, oh, well, I'm just going to do this or I'm just going to do that. And it's going to be easy. And it's like, it's not. It might be, but if it is, that will be rare. And it's going to be, I think you have to get in this because you have a passion to tell a story or to make music or to paint or to be a poet. Like that's got to be your guiding, driving force. And then, you know, it's also about relationships, because the thing that I don't share with everybody, but the thing that's interesting is that in my first fundraising trip in '02 to make my feature premium, I was with my man Dorian, who was in my film, meeting up with his cousin Shah out here in LA. And we're at Fat Burger on Santa Monica Boulevard. And we're meeting up with one of Shah's good homies, who was Kenya Barris. And so now from '02 to 2016, when I come in the program, he's aware of what I've been doing. We're friends, you know what I mean? And so it's just it's a long, circuitous journey, but you know, every step of the way, you just stand there on your grind and keep doing what makes you happy.
Absolutely. Tell us how you are faring during this pandemic. This is the piece that allows all of us to kind of, you know, connect to one another, because we're all enduring this pandemic together. We're all in quarantine. We're all probably going a little bit crazy right now. Tell us how you are doing, how you're faring, and how this pandemic is affecting your well-being, as well as some of the work that you're doing.
Yeah. So, I mean, first and foremost, I'm just hoping everybody's staying inside and remaining safe and being smart about what they do. There's an interesting kind of, you know, disconnect depending upon where you live, because it can feel like you're just home. But, you know, staying in touch with folks and kind of having, you know, a lot of my friends are still back in New York and New Jersey, you know, it's super real. And I don't want to I could go on for an hour about this, but like, it's unfortunate that there's not the proper communication about how real of a thing this is, because I think that's why you have so many people up in arms and acting like it's nothing and talking about liberate their state, which is bananas.
Yeah, it's like, what?
Yeah, like it's like, yeah. I mean, yeah. So, you know, but other than like kind of trying to be there for the folks who are kind of really being affected personally and making donations where possible, you know, it's been like trying to find a way in this weird, you know, kind of like to your students. There's a little bit of an analogy here. Like, you know, when you get out of college, when you graduate college, it's the first time where you kind of lose mile markers of time. You know, it's like, you know, September, I'll take this course for 4 months. Then January, I'll take this one for 4 months. And then the summer's when I relax, you know what I mean? And then I'll come back. Like, once you graduate college, you lose those little like units of time. And then it's like real world, right? And so your milestones have to be your own. And so it's not totally analogous, but in this time, what I've been working to do is really kind of design a schedule around it, to gain some control over a thing that I have no control over. So, you know, this short that I'm going to do, that was everyday writing. I got a book that I finally have started writing. I got a feature that I'll get to next, and, you know, just watching all the shows that I hope to be involved with when this is over. and just not really trying to turn the TV on until 5 o'clock, just be like creative for me during the day, and then absorb the creativity of others from 5 on, and then, have time with my wife and learn how to cook a little bit better. So, trying to make the best out of a thing that's super whack.
Right, super whack. Say that. We also have Tony Clomax here on the line with us. Tony and Pete are actually, the two that are connected here in this case. And I just so appreciate Tony inviting his dear friend to join us. Tony, why don't you chime on in and say good morning to everyone as well.
Hey, everyone. Professor Clomax.
What's up?
So, hey, Pete, now, they might not know, but you went back to NYU to teach.
Yes.
What did you learn while teaching that makes you a better filmmaker?
Very good question. Man, I mean, I taught acting. I taught an acting class. I taught directing. I taught pre-production. And the first thing I think I learned from the acting class was, obviously you can't just tell someone what to do. Right. And whether acting or production class, when guiding this process, I've got to guide it in a way that is helpful for this student in front of me, right? But also creates mathematical elements of the equation for everyone watching, if that makes sense, right? So it's like, I'm talking to you about XYZ, but also doing it in a way where the students can be like, oh, I see what he's putting together, so they can be doing math as well and not just be watching someone be dictated to. Because one thing that I used to hate when I was in film school was like, you kind of got feedback based off of what the teacher would have done if they were you. And that's not what I'm looking for. Like, I need you to help me find my voice, not revise it to yours. And so learning how to do that was the first step in hopefully being a good teacher. And then second, I think that it helped me become more communicative and clear, and that travels over to set. There's a thing that I've watched, The Art of Cinematography. It's a series from this guy Alex Buono, who does the digital stuff for SNL, and it's really interesting because he oh no, I'm talking about a different one. This was from Vincent LaFleur. He's a DP, and he talks about the beginning of Forrest Gump, right? And in the beginning of that, you've got this feather doing all this stuff against green screen. And it seems like a small detail, but it really struck home for me. It was like, you have to be very specific in how you tell your post-production and your DP, camera team, what you want to do. So like, there's times where like I've seen, directors say, okay, I want to follow the character, right? And so the camera crew, like I saw this when shadowing, the camera crew sets everything up, and then the camera is behind me. Like I'm walking and the camera's behind me. And then they're like, that's not what I wanted. I want the camera in front. I was like, well, you want the camera to lead that person, not follow. Right. And that's 30 minutes wasted. You know what I mean? Like, so like learning the specificity and how to communicate with clarity was a great thing, a great part of becoming hopefully an effective instructor at NYU.
Well, you know what? Tell you what, if I go ahead and turn my mic off and Tony turns his mic off, we would love it if you became professor right now and taught us a thing. Go for it.
So I know we've got a variety of different interests here, but I'm going to focus this on how to maximize your pre-production time as an episodic director. There are probably principles here that you could take and apply to whatever you want to do. Because I think every creative, I think a lot of creative jobs, you go to school and you're kind of taught how to execute upon your creativity, but the real thing, or the next step rather, that will help you succeed professionally will be what kind of systems do you create so you can reproduce your creativity at a high level every time without needing epiphanies. You know what I mean? Like, I can't just get a script and look out the window and wait for like an epiphany to hit me about what I'm going to do. So when you think about episodic TV, I'll work in an easier time frame with a half hour broadcast TV show, right? So you take a show like Blackish, or you take a show like Single Parents or Mixish or whatever, you're going to get 4 days to prep and you're going to get 5 days to shoot. So if you were to, and it's always the same days. So you would start your prep on Tuesday. You'd have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then come Monday, you're going to be shooting Monday through Friday. And it's very much an assembly line, because while you're prepping your episode, the episode before you is shooting. So you start on that Tuesday to Friday, but if you're doing episode 10, episode 9 is shooting while you're prepping. And so when you get there, you're expected to hop right into a variety of meetings. You're going to have a concept meeting. I'll explain these things. You have a concept meeting, which is going to be you and like 20 to 40 people, depending upon the show, around the table. The AD, assistant director, leads it. They've broken down the script, and they're basically just going through like, this is going to be this is going to be that, here's what we need. Nothing super creative. It's more nuts and bolts, logistical kind of checklists of what you need. Then from there, and it's also going to be the first time where it may be the first time people ever hear your voice. They may not know you. Like I still go to shows where I haven't done them before. So I might find myself getting more jobs via email now because I've done more work. But still, when you come in there, and they're definitely like, and waiting to see if you're gonna make any sense. And so and so you don't want to drop that ball. Then you're gonna probably have a table. You're gonna probably go on a location scout. Day one, you're gonna go on a location scout. And that would be for anything that is not a standing set in the episode. So if you take Blackish as an example, the house is a set. Stevens and Lido was a set. But if, for instance, I did one where it was Jack and Dre calling the cops on all these Airbnb people, we have to go find where we're going to shoot that. And I have to start having ideas in mind to push these talented collaborators who run their different departments forward, without necessarily committing myself to anything. I just want to, like, there might be a point where I need to kind of say, hey, I'm going to probably want 2 police cars. Give me 1 sedan and 1 SUV, because I think I'm going to do a shot coming above the sirens and looking down at the curb, and I need the height of an SUV. Like, that's the kind of specificity that you got to kind of come in there with. But then, so, you'll do a table read that first day. So the actors are shooting the prior episode to you. They come up at lunch and they're going to read the script for the first time. It'll be the first time that the writers and the showrunner hear it, first time you hear it, first time they read it. And then they go, network gives notes on it. Revisions are going to happen all week. And then from there, you basically spend Wednesday, Thursday, Friday getting a little bit more specific. So you'll have a meeting with the production, with the art department. You'll have a meeting with about props. You'll have a meeting about playback. Like, if there's any kind of like, are we showing this? Like, there's a text exchange. Do you want to see the phone on the phone, or are we just going to show them holding the phone? because if we're going to go to a shot of the phone, we have to prepare the graphics. We have to make it respond to, you know, the action of the thumbs or whatever. Is there any kind of integration? Like, do we have a deal with Samsung and you have to show this device, or they use Microsoft at the office and Apple stuff at home? Like it really does get that detailed. And a lot of it's contractual. And oftentimes when those brands, when their things are being integrated, you become now a commercial director as well as an episodic director, because the people from the brand, there's 6 people now in Video Village from Google, and you got to work with them too. And so, you know, as you move through, you'd have wardrobe meetings. You and your AD, you're kind of figuring out background, right? It might say there's a party. Well, what does that mean? Is that 10 people? Is that 20? To me, is it 25, but you got a budget for 18? Okay, 18 is great. You know, like there's all these things. And so you kind of lead up to a tech scout, where now all the things that you were kind of hedging toward in your location scout, you've now gotten to the place where you've solidified what you want to do. And folks need to know exactly what you're going to be looking at with the camera, so they know that they can park 8 trucks over here. They can set up craft service over there, and you're not going to be like, oh, I want to shoot that. And now suddenly you've lost 30 minutes because they got to move everything out of the way. And your final meeting is a tone meeting where you will talk with the showrunner and the writer, and they're going to let you know all of the things that are going on kind of with the vibe of the cast and crew, as well as it's your opportunity to make sure you understand the script. Like, is this funny? I didn't, is that the joke? Okay, well, you might have a question on something like, are you setting up, on dramas, sometimes I'll read a script and I'll be like, sounds like these people like about to hook up or something. So I might ask, is that where you're going with this? And then that helps me know, like, oh, I might want to add a little bit of, you know, sauce to how we shoot that, so you can feel, so I'm giving the proper alley-oop to 3 episodes from now, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of what your prep week looks like. They say bleed in pre-production. No, they say what? Sweat in pre-production so you don't bleed in production. And so I give you that outline to then kind of back up and talk about how you can maximize your prep time, because from minute 1, they're expecting information from you. And oftentimes you might not get the script until I've gotten them the night before, I've gotten them 3 days in, and I still, even without a script, have to prep, and I have to be ready, and I can't complain. So the first thing that I do, well, first off, I'll mention a book that folks should check out. It's called Directors Tell the Story by Bethany Rooney and Mary Lou Belly. And it's basically the book that educated me just to what is expected of you as a television director. Super crucial. A lot of what I've gotten from there, I've refined into my own process after about 30 episodes, because I know what I've found what works for me. But you get that script, you read that script over and over and over again. The first read that you do is really, for me, just like as an audience member. Let me read it, absorb it, feel what's going on here. Then the second read, there's a great application called Scriptation that I recommend to people. I'm going to share my screen with y'all. I think I could do that real quick. This is from Scriptation, and where we at? Boom, share. And this is a page. Do y'all see that? Okay, yeah. And so this is a page from an episode I did of A Million Little Things. And so one of the first things I'll do in Scriptation is I'll go and I'll put this blue mark around every bit of action through the whole script. I'll do one read again where I'm kind of just going through to make sure I'm doing that, because I want to be able to be on set and look very quickly at what I'm responsible for shooting. So I'm like, oh, yellow sign. He looks in the mirror. He faces forward. Okay, cut to black. Okay, POV, boom, boom, boom. And I'm doing that as a second read. And while I'm doing that, I'm still absorbing the script again. The next thing I'll do is move to a place where I read the script from every department head's point of view. And so I'm gathering that I'm choosing. This is if I have time. Now, this is like the ideal scenario, because when I don't have that, when I'm getting it late, I can't necessarily read it 5 times with a particular perspective. I may have to think about all of them at the same time. But ideally, in the process of just reading and reading and reading, I'll read the script from the production designer's point of view. If there's anything unique, like a location need, I'm going to make notes about what that location should offer, so I can get what I'm thinking about as a director, whether camera or blocking or whatever it might be. Then I'll read it as wardrobe. I'll read it as an AD, like for the background. I'll read it as cinematographer. Notice the one thing I'm not saying, I'm not reading it as a director, because for me to direct, I have to be able to collaborate and guide these co-creative folks with a director's intent, but in their job. And so the final pass is going to be reading it for actor breakdowns. And the first step is identifying what's going on in each scene. And then after that, identifying the kind of power dynamics between each character. Another thing that happens in this process is the creation of, and again, this is all from the same book, but I'll do this thing where I make, oops, sorry, that's the wrong document, where I make a spreadsheet that allows me to keep track of all the different storylines in the script. So again, this comes from the same book that I mentioned. This right here is, I'm only going to show you the top of it, but this is from a Silicon Valley episode that I directed. And basically I'll go through, I'll have how many pages, how many scenes, and I'll basically go and identify every story, give it a name. And if you were to see all 33 scenes of this, it ends up looking like a top-down kind of view of the architecture of the story. And it serves multiple purposes, because I can keep this on me while I'm on set. I don't have to, like location scouts, I don't have to thumb through the script. I can look at this one sheet and be like, okay, this and this and this happens here. So we can walk in and I can know what I'm doing. One of the worst things for you to do is to constantly be flipping through the entire script, because it looks like you don't know what's going on. And it looks like it's your crutch. And even if it's kind of ridiculous to have that be viewed in that way, it's the reality, because no one else is doing it. They've had script, or they had some version of it early enough that they're like, in scene 28, you need this and that. And you're like, man, I just read it last night. So that kind of methodical digestion of the script over and over again helps you get there. It's also useful when you're shooting, because you can refer to it before each scene, and you can say, oh, okay, the last time Bo was in a scene, she did XYZ. And I also know that we're going from here to there, because sometimes the actor may be forgot or maybe unclear. Or what happens a lot too is that, like I mentioned, they do that table read, and then, they're shooting their episode. Things kind of sink in the back of their head potentially, and they might remember what it was when they read it. And now there's been maybe a drastic change, and maybe they didn't get to read the script or not. These things happen, and you've got your roadmap right here to help guide that. The other thing that happens is at some point you have to start getting into the director's job, which is blocking and shot selection. Now, I think the difference between episodic directing and directing a film is that you're entering something that already has a predetermined style that they've worked, well, that hopefully they've thought quite a deal about. But even if not, it's what they're doing. And so you are there to fall in line with that. There's a director who said to me, like, I think he said that the way that Dick Wolf would say it is like, I need you to come make an episode of Law and Order, but better, right? And so find a way to give me what we have, what we do, but elevate it while keeping it within the same DNA. And so at some point, obviously you're going to need to start laying out where people are going, what the cameras are doing. And these things are going to be based off of the story and not your idea of what's cool. And it's going to be based off of how the show was shot. So another great app is called, Hollywood Shot Designer. So I mentioned scriptation for the screenplay, and Hollywood Shot Designer is great for being able to lay in a plan and block your actors and your camera. And so here's an example. I'll give you two different examples. This one here is, this was from a Blackish scene, and this was one that I made. Sometimes you'll have an overhead floor plan from the production designer. Sometimes I might not have it and I want to get a jump on it and I'll lay it out quicker. But in this scenario, you can see I've got Bo as the red character. I've got Diane as the blue character. And in this scene, Bo's in the closet trying to pick out a dress for Diane for a date. Diane comes in, Bo moves to the chair, Diane moves to the bed, and then they have a brief conversation and Bo moves out. And so this is my idea of how I'll shoot it. It was pretty close. Things change when you get on set, but you have to come in with a plan. And that is something that was shared with the production designer. And I'm sorry, that was shared with the AD and the DP before we got to production. So they know exactly what I'm looking for. I'll just give you another example of what it looks like when you have the actual floor plan. This is from a Grey's Anatomy surgery. And so here you'll notice I have the actual floor plan. I'm putting the actors in, I'm making notes in red about important beats like removing the loops. Here's the EMG machine. Make sure I get inserts of those EMG results. Camera F at the top left, and I want that raking to get looks to one character. Make sure I get reaction pickups, and you'll see my masters moving. So all of that is predetermined, so you can come in to prep with a strategy. The last thing I'll show you is, and it's kind of redundant, I suppose, but sometimes you're going to have to do these things totally by hand, and it's all about like how much time you have and how important the information is. So I had a motorcycle crash that was pretty involved in an episode of A Million Little Things, and in scriptation you can add a page. So I added this blank page in here, and I'm basically, while scouting, trying to figure out how I can make this one stretch of road work for two different scenes and two different moments, a crash and pre-crash and post-crash. Because if you remember in the script page I showed you, it cut to black on a sound effect. So, you know, this kind of dotted blue line that forms what looks like a 7 for scene 31, I've taken that to, I've marked off that angle as something I will not show in scene 30 because I need to preserve it for scene 31 so you can feel like we're in two different spaces. And then these things are a little bit detailed, so I'm making notes of when the stunt guy's in the shot and when the actor's in the shot. And when I'm on a process trailer and when it's the bike moving. And, I've got notes of like down here in blue frame rate. I'll probably do a couple passes where I put it at a different frame rate, maybe change the shutter. And all of those details are basically outlined. And so the whole point of all of this is you're kind of doing it all concurrently in your 4 days. On an hour-long show, you're going to have more time. You're going to get like 7 or 8 days of prep, and you're going to shoot for 8 or 9 days. The difference between broadcast and network is that on a show like on HBO, like Silicon Valley, 30-minute show, I had 8 days to shoot that. So that's why you'll notice on those kind of shows, you have kind of maybe much more dynamic coverage. You'll have, more expensive equipment. You'll be looking at crane moves and all of these things. It's because they are looking to have something with a higher production value. And they're also looking for directors who can come in and give something a particular look. So, all those things kind of fall in line. You're sharing all along the process. You're answering questions the best you can. You are not committing to things that you don't know. You're also comfortable enough to tell people what you don't know. There have been plenty of things that I've done where it's like, look, I've never done this before, so I just want you to explain like how we're going to put smoke in here when there ain't no smoke on set. You know what I mean? So like, so I look forward to next Thursday, Station 19, to see how I did. But you just have to consider what each department needs, have a clarity of vision, and work to communicate it. Much to Tony's question, you really have to work to communicate it in television more than any other medium, I think, because when you do a film, you have so much pre-production time, so much conversation. Like, they are expecting you in TV to show up, have done all of the thinking that you need to do, and then be able to say, and here's what I want to do. But also you have to be able to flip on a dime, because you could pick blocking for a scene and the actors would bump against it because it doesn't make sense for character or whatever reason. And now this thing that you thought about for the past week, you have to flip and change and reconsider and rebuild it. And you have to be able to do that on a dime. And the more that you've thought about these things in prep, the more that you can actually be nimble enough to pivot while still maintaining the integrity of the perspective that you wanted to apply to a scene. So I hope that wasn't too long-winded, but that was
no, that was excellent. Not too long-winded at all. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the students to open their cameras and open their mics. I'm fairly certain you can go on for hours giving us these nuggets, and they're going to take advantage of a Q&A time right now. Come on, aspiring directors.
Okay.
Aaron, I know you
there
got a
you
question.
go.
I have a question. Okay. So as a director, is it easier to understand the writer's vision when directing, or do you kind of just go off your own instincts and your own like feelings when you're directing either a TV show or?
right? So I think the thing to consider, much like that architect analogy, right? Like there's always the source material, right? So in with the architecture metaphor, the source material is what the client wants, what kind of house they're looking for, and I'm bringing my knowledge of what's safe and what's going to also be in the design kind of language that you want. You say you want a Spanish colonial, I'm going to be like, here's what those look like, and we'll collaborate with my expertise to realize your vision. It's a similar deal when you get to the script. During prep, you're spending a lot of time saying, I left that out. One of the things that I'm also doing in those reads, I'm writing any question that I have down on the script.
Yeah.
So like if I'm like, I don't know how this joke lands, or sometimes like it's touchy because like you can't say that's not funny, you know, but sometimes you just have to, you know, you're always respecting the process and you're always leading with acknowledging the hard work that everyone's doing and then trying to get clarity on what maybe isn't working for you. Because like nobody should say to me, yo, that blocking's dumb. You know what I mean? Like they ideally they'd be like, I see what you're going for, but what if we did it like this? Now we're collaborating versus like people, you know, throwing flames at everything you do.
Yeah.
And so your job as a director is to really get into the head of is to understand the show and then to get into the head of the writer so you understand their intention. And then from there, when you have ideas that are maybe unique to the show, you're trying to get buy-in from the writer and the showrunner. So for instance, if you watched Blackish last week, at the end of the episode, you know, it's been a kind of hard day for Pops and he goes walking from the guest house to a bedroom in the main house. And with that, I was like, look, I want to Steadicam this whole thing because I don't want to reveal his face until the last minute. And I just want you to have some sense of like, where is he going? Or in the Airbnb episode, I was like, I want to do the cop stuff handheld once they arrive. I know you guys don't do that, but I know this is ABC, it's prime time, it's comedy, so I know we can't turn it into Southland, you know what I mean? But what can we do to give this a little more urgency for Dre and for the audience, you know? And you're really just working to make sure like there's a handshake of creativity between you and the writer. If you're imposing your own vision on it, I think you're not gonna find it works very well.
Right.
And the end game, the kind of long game of all of this is that when you deliver a show that they are expecting, and it's like you don't even have to, you know, like you can like a jumper or like a double pump reverse dunk are still only worth 2 points each. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so if you deliver that episode and it's in the flavor of the show, and then they like you didn't ruffle anybody's feathers, they bring you back. And what happens is over time, they know that you know the show and you start getting a little more freedom. Yeah. And it's, that's kind of where you want to be. There are shows that I've gone back to now where I have the pleasure of no one really comes to Video Village anymore because they're like, oh, he got it.
He got it. Yeah. Wow. Anyone else have a question for us?
I have a question. It's kind of a two-parter question, I think. So as an episodic director, do you look at scripts or do you look at like spec scripts? And if so, what do you look for like in those scripts? Like what makes you attached to them, I guess?
When you say, what do I look at spec scripts? I'm not sure what you mean.
Like, do you have like, are you in a part where you can read the spec scripts also, or do they hand them to you because, you know, they trust you as a director?
Okay, I think so. What happens is you'll get, so what's a good example? So when productions were shut down, I was prepping for the season finale of All Rise, and it was episode 22. So I got my script, but there's all these stories before. So there's at that point maybe 17 episodes had aired. So I had watched all of those. Then I had director cuts that were made available to me for, let's say, 18, 19, and 20. So I could watch what happened, what was being cut and refined. And then for 21, I could get the script for that one. And then for 22, I get my script. And I'm looking at all of these to make sure I'm tracking the story. I'm seeing any new development. I understand what they're setting up. I see what I'm paying off, you know, and when there's a lot of lead time in that, like when you know you're doing a job far in advance, I'll I'll reach out to the production and just kind of ask them to keep giving me the scripts as they are done, so I can read them ahead of time and not have to read 20 scripts in one weekend. But that's kind of the deal. They'll give you what you need to do your job. Is that what you were asking?
Well, I'm trying to join this competition and I have to write a spec script. So I was wondering, as an episodic director, what exactly do you look for in those type of scripts?
In a spec script?
Mm-hmm.
I would never see a spec script. Okay. Right, because like a spec script is probably going to be for a competition or for a submission, like your agent might submit it to a show, and they'll be like, oh, here's, Madeline's version of a Seinfeld episode. And they'll be like, oh, that's a good ass Seinfeld episode, and then now you become a staff writer on that show or some other show, but those are more often, that's like the writer's version of the mixtape, you know what I mean? Just like the short film is the director's version of a mixtape. It's this thing that we put out that kind of has a particular audience. That's one that's more behind the scenes than anything. But it's useful in proving to folks that you have a voice and a vision. Someone's asking what a spec script is. A spec script is something that's written on speculation, meaning you did not write it with a deal in place, with a guaranteed check. It's speculative, and you're writing it with the hope that it does something in particular for you.
You should know that was on the midterm.
We're going to also welcome one of our former participants in the series. Fellow director Vincent Powell has joined us right there in LA as well. I know these gentlemen know each other as well. Welcome this morning, Vincent.
Yo, it's so good to be here. So good to hear Pete speak and gain a lot of knowledge from you. It's good to see you, Pete.
You too, brother. Hope all's well, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you, brother. Thank you, man. Thank you for the nuggets. I listening to your timeline, I hadn't really charted it like that. You can see somebody's IMDb, but you don't really know exactly, the moves. And so being able to just listen to your timeline post grad school really helped me out. Having finished last year at SC and shot my feature in October, and still trying to figure things out. Y'all excuse my 1-year-old. Still, figure things out as things fall in place. It gives me a sense of time. Right. I appreciate that, man.
Well, the thing that I can't say enough is that it's literally, well, I'll loop it back to this. Like, I feel like there's this world of expectation that we can fall into, and I fell deep into it because I felt that I had done, this short film. I kind of put it in the voice of my former self, which was like, y'all told me like the pinnacle of student filmmaking was Sundance. I did that. Where y'all at? Where y'all at? And then I was like, all right, y'all ain't here, cool. So now I raised $500,000 with some folks and made this film, and now I'm like, yo, I did that. Where's my agent? Where's my manager at?
Right.
Okay, well, cool. I'm gonna do a feature doc now. I got Andre Brower narrating this thing. Where y'all at? Nothing. Okay, cool. Now it's 2008. You know what I mean? And I'm like, all right, let me write a script now. Maybe I got a right to win. I win this Tribeca competition. Where y'all at? Nowhere. Cool. And so from there, like, the triangulation of writing and trying to do these things that I thought would sell for a 6-year period, I arrived at 2014 and said, I gotta lose the expectation, because the expectation is polluting me in ways that I might not even know I'm giving off. And so if I can just go make something and just be like, yo, this is what I can do at this moment in time when left to my own devices, like not making a branded docu-series campaign for a client, that was becoming my bread and butter. But it was like, I was shooting, I was editing, I was making a little bit of money, but I was not telling any narrative stories. And I was like, let me just go make this thing. And the guarantee, so it went from expectation to guarantee. And the guarantee that I have is that I can watch this at midnight on my Vimeo channel or YouTube in some basketball shorts and a wife beater and be like, okay, that was all right. That's where I'm at now.
Yeah.
And the irony is that that's when things started popping. And, you know, even then when I got into the TV programs, I did not expect to get episodes. I expected to, the guarantee that I had for myself was I'm going to learn how TV's made. Nobody can keep that from happening. I'm going to meet people and build relationships. Nobody can keep that from happening but me. I'm going to take what I learned back to my own projects. And that is exactly, now it's still the same thing. Like this short, like I've been pitching shows to networks and production companies. And obviously I haven't landed one yet, but now I'm like, well, I'm going to go make this other short that's unique in its own way, but kind of helps to cement the clarity that I'm also a content creator, not just a director. Because as far as the industry is concerned, they don't even know I'm not a guy who makes feature films, even though I've made 2, because they know me as a guy who does TV. And first it was only comedy. So then I had to prove I could do drama. And so, you know, I'm still going back to the same well of, let me make another short that I want to make, something that I want to say. And, you know, if it brings, you know, all the things I think it could, that's great. But it's a short I'm passionate about, and that's the point. And every step of the way has been driven by having done something for myself, from the short to the feature. The feature powered me to have a production company. The production company's success powered me to have the money to make the short. The short got me into TV. Now I got TV money, so I'm making another shit. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's just,
and question: the short you're working on now, is that any type of teaser to a feature, or is it just this isolated type of project that just only lives as a short?
It's what it is it's a teaser to a point of view. Okay. So I feel like, you know, you can try and make something that is a direct jump off into the next project, but I actually was trying to do that, but that was becoming so crippling in making the idea work for 2 different purposes.
Yeah.
That I said, why am I imposing the same industry-ness on myself, right? Like, let me just make this thing. And just like Black Card was, it's a very unique thing. And then people are like, we're not hiring you to do that, but we like what you did in that. So can you come do this?
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you know, designed in that way.
We have a question from the YouTube chat. Naren Henry asked, Pete, can you talk about tone meetings and how you take notes from the writers, the EP on the episode that you're directing?
Well, first, what's up, Naren? I know Naren back from NYU. How do I take notes? You know, I think, so the guiding principle for me in all industry exchanges are, how do I not get embarrassed? How do I show that I'm prepared? How do I win, right? And that means I treat every episode like my first one. Now, you do, in a tone meeting, it could go a couple of ways. I've had tone meetings that are 4 hours where it's just a data dump on me of just everything that they want to tell me. And what often happens is I'll take my notes, but there's also the assistant who is writing down everything we're talking about. And then they tend to send you, only for the director and like the AD, they send you an editor, they send you a script where they've inserted the notes in it. That's great. I read that like before I shoot each scene, just to remind myself that I'm on the same page, but it ends up making a 30-page script, like 90 pages. And so, but that's one version of it. Another version is you come in, they don't even want to have the meeting. Sometimes, like some people don't want to have it. You know what I mean? Like, and if they aren't going to dump all this information on you, then how are you, then how are you going to get the information you need? So I come in with questions in every scene. Typically, that could just be a question a confirmation, or yeah, I try and have something to say on every scene, because what you don't want to do in the tone meeting that they've left in your hands is be like, nah, I'm cool, like it all makes sense. Like that's like going on a job interview and they're like, you have any questions? You're like, no, I don't, and like that looks crazy. Yeah. And then you're gonna look real crazy when you mess up some moments in your episode. So you gotta know what's important, you gotta confirm the themes, you gotta get clarity on anything that you didn't have clarity on. If you got no questions, think of 5. Have 5 questions that are like, intuitive. And I'll just, overwhelmingly, there's really just a general principle that that I need to take away. And oftentimes, like, I consider every meeting an opportunity to show that I'm a director. And so I often ask, like, what makes you most happy when you receive my cut? What will make you love this episode? And then maybe they have that answer ready. Maybe they end up coming up with that on the fly. But that puts me in a position of knowing exactly what makes a happy client. Mm-hmm. And if I can execute on that, then I've done my job.
Excellent. Excellent. Anyone have a final question? Tony, do you have a final question before we sign out this morning?
Just in my few opportunities to shadow on shows, I gotta say there's nobody as prepared and technical as Pete. And so I use you as a guide. And so you guys are getting some great information. Because I've been on some sets and I actually show the director some of the apps that you use. They're like, what's this? And I mean, they're not as prepared as he is. And maybe some people might think is over preparing, but like you said, it's better to sweat in pre-production than bleed in production. Yeah. And I just wanted to say that again, because that is a key thing that the students need to know. But yeah, I appreciate all of that.
Thank you, brother.
I have another question.
I was gonna add on that. The thing to keep in mind too is that by the time you get to set, like I want to be so well versed in what I'm thinking, in what this is, and in how I want to approach it, that I can become a normal person, right? Because if you are all on set, like you want to just be in your script, then you can't kick it with nobody. You can't you're not going to look laid back and relaxed. And part of that is the experience too. There's the prep and the job you do and the episode you deliver. But the other thing that people don't talk about, and this is my new next thing I'm attacking, is the theater of doing the job. Because Tony, you've probably been on different sets where it's like, somebody might be like a little meek and their episodes might be dope, but like when they're on set, it don't feel dope. Right? So like that's the thing too. You want to be able to be free flowing and this and that, and you can do that because you're like, I know I got this. If y'all tell me you cutting this scene and now I got to bring up a scene from Friday, I'm ready. What y'all need? You know what I mean? So that's important, to get yourself to a point where you can really be nimble on set.
Yeah.
And then I know there was a question that I stepped in front of.
I think I was about to say, Amarachi may have our closing question today. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi. Oh, okay. So you were saying that you were working on Blackish. So I wanted to know how it is like working with Kenya Bears.
It's great. I mean, it's great. I mean, it's been different since the first one I did, because as time went on, like sometimes people they have new shows that are going and there's only so much time in a day. But the thing about him is that he's super smart, knows how to navigate the notes of a network, and knows how to communicate what he's looking for in the script. Because really it comes down to like, people can only deliver as well as you communicate what you need them to deliver. And so he's really, really good at that.
Wow. Well, Pete, thank you again for being with us today. We've all just grown a foot taller as a result of you sharing your experience with us in episodic television. We, I think a lot of times our students at Prairie View feel like we're out on this island because we're so far away from, New York or LA or, some of the larger markets, but our students are building a great program with their enthusiasm and their energy. And they've just learned so much from you, I'm certain today, because I have, and I appreciate you so much, brother.
Thank you.
You continue to be safe there in LA. You too, Vincent. I know you guys are in a hot spot in a way that I just couldn't imagine, having to endure. Even here in Houston, I feel like we're kind of managing all of this in stride, but you're in a hot spot, and I just pray that you all are safe and your families are safe.
For sure.
Yes, baby. All right, guys, come back at 2:30. We have another amazing guest who is joining us from LA. Morenike Jola will be joining us. She's an amazing director, producer, writer, does a lot of work with Disney. Come back at 2:30. Thanks again, Pete. All right.
Thank you.
Our love to Kelly also. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.